Welcome to Sit With Me. Today we get to speak with Charla. We're talking about substance abuse and being a parent of someone that navigates substance abuse. And there's so much to be heard and to be learned. And so let's just jump right in.
Okay, so my name is Charla Bokikio, and I live in Mill Creek, Utah. I am an actor and an acting coach, and I live with my beautiful little golden doodle, Zoe.
Cute. I love that.
I'm a fairly recent widow. My dog has become my little companion lately.
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet. Did you have your dog before your spouse passed?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Those dogs are beautiful. I'm not really a dog person, but I can admit that those dogs are cute.
It's true. They're hard to not love. They really are just amazingly sweet dogs.
Good.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about substance abuse and specifically being the parent of someone that navigates substance abuse and what that can look like. So give us a little bit of your story on how you fall into that space.
So my only daughter, Cassidy, she died of a drug overdose almost 9 years ago now.
Oh,
And she had struggled with addiction really all the way through her adolescent years, started pretty young. So, yeah, she was battling that for most of her life, her teenage life. And she was 22 when she died. So,
yeah.
yeah, it was like just trying to navigate how to help someone that you love, but feeling super helpless because it's just one of those things that, yeah, it feels like you're pedaling really fast, but you're not going anywhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I
hmm
can imagine.
Um,
So what kind of got her into that space and what was the thing that kind of started that story for her?
so I think as I look back, I think it really started when she was very young, but I think it came from a place of like anxiety for
Mm,
her because as a child, she was incredibly anxious. She suffered from intense separation anxiety at a certain time in her life when she was little. And as I look back at little behaviors, I think it's all just rooted in anxiety when I look at it. So
wow.
I think that was the beginning of it. And when she got into like middle school, social pressures start to get weird, just
Mm,
friends.
yeah,
And and hormones probably. I think if
it's
we're being
fair.
honest, I'm sure that's all just a part of it. But I think it just added to her angst.
Yeah.
And I really believe that she turned to substances because she was trying to self-medicate. I don't think she knew that,
Yeah.
but these things were helping her feel better temporarily.
Yeah.
And so
And
she
did
just
you
kept
know
like,
about it at the time?
no, no. We found out about most of the substance use after we had gotten her into treatment for the first time when she was 16. Yeah, we heard a lot of stories afterwards that she
Facts.
came clean on when she was, yeah, probably 12, 13. She admitted to like getting into parents' liquor cabinets, sleepovers,
Mm,
looking through medicine cabinets when she was at sleepovers, seeing if she could find. And a couple of her friends would do this too, but it seemed to me that most of those girls that were drinking with her or whatever, or would find a Xanax or something, they didn't have issues with it later in life. It was like they
oh,
were just dabbling and it was a fun little experiment. And then they were like, okay, I'm going to get on with my life and take school seriously or whatever. But for Cassidy, I think it just really put its hooks into her
mm,
early. And she just kept going to the next like
next thing.
level,
The stronger
you know?
thing that she needed.
Yeah, because it's like alcohol stopped making her feel better, and so then pills weren't quite doing the job, so then it was just one thing after another until she found heroin at the age of 15.
That is
So
so young.
it is. And we were living in Alabama at the time. So I'm from Utah, but moved away for most of my adult life and then came back like 10 years ago to 11 years ago
Okay.
after she had died. So she grew up in a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. It was a upper middle class neighborhood. Her dad was a lawyer. I was a program director for an arts organization, and I was still doing some acting, but it was a little less because I was raising a child.
Yeah,
Don't have
I'm
as
sure.
much time. And she had every opportunity. It wasn't like, I think sometimes people get in their heads that someone who suffers from substance use disorder is a junkie on the street or lower income, really struggling, just a troublemaker, whatever those kinds of
Yeah,
stereotypes are. But it's not like that. It's like these are just kids who have underlying issues and they're
yeah.
trying to feel better.
And she was like she was blending in. You didn't know that she was using substances until she was 16.
No, we found out, yeah, I guess it was 15, 16. We found out fairly quickly once she had tried, it all
Heroin.
came out. And that was what really got us to stand up and pay attention. Because before that, I think there were some behavior issues, and
Mm,
we just thought, oh, she's just an angsty teenager. We didn't understand that there were
it's more.
substances involved.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
was it like when you found out, and what was that experience? Was it a surprise? Did she tell you? And then what did you feel? That feels so
Yeah,
shocking, painful. I don't know. I'm trying to imagine.
it's pretty intense. Actually, let me back up really quick before I go to that part of the story. When she was 12, we found out that she told me, with the help of a friend, that she had been cutting. So she was cutting when she was 12. And so we got help for her then. She was in an adolescent psychiatric unit for about a week, and then
Mm,
we had her in intensive outpatient therapy after that, and seeing a therapist quite regularly even after that. So we felt like we were getting a handle on things. But looking back, I realized that, therapy is only as effective as the secrets that you tell them.
yeah,
So I think
you
there
can
were
only get
things
so
she
far.
probably wasn't talking about that
Mm,
she couldn't address. So it's interesting. We always think, oh, if we put our kids in therapy early, then everything will be fine. But that's only if they're going to talk about what's really going on, because,
yes.
that's a whole other thing.
Same with
So
adults. I was gonna say, I hear that all the time. It's, I'm going to therapy,
absolutely.
but I just can't bring it up. And I'm like,
Then
why
why
are
are
you
you in
going?
therapy?
Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we were not strangers to the psychiatric world and all of that, and
Mm,
psychology, and try and find ways to help her. We were very much proactive, we felt, but
mm.
she just slipped through the cracks. So by the time I guess she was just turning 16. She was actually, I think, still 15 when we found out. But yeah, it was a dramatic thing. She had a boyfriend who we didn't really like, but we didn't know why. It was just kind of
Something. Mm,
this feeling. But we were trying not to alienate. We were like,
mm.
okay, we're going to try to accept this and be cool with it. Because as soon as we would say, I'm sure that when your parents say you can't date someone, you're going to
Keep
sneak around
dating.
anyway.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, she really likes him, whatever, we'll let her do her thing. And so this boyfriend, yeah, her behavior got a lot worse when she was dating him,
Mm,
and like staying out late, and it was always like one thing after another, and she was being grounded and blah, blah. It was just
mm.
do the things that you do as parents.
Yeah.
One night, it was a closing night of a play that I had been directing in Birmingham. And I was out with some of the cast, and we were having dinner afterwards. And I go to the restroom at some point and check my phone. And there were like 11 missed calls from my husband at the time, her dad. And because he was out of town, he was like down in Mobile doing a case.
Mm.
And he said, the police are at our house. You need to get there right now.
Oh my
And
goodness.
because they got his number somehow, I'm not sure how. And so I went and apparently found out that her boyfriend, we found out that night that both of them had shot up, injected cocaine
Wow.
And we didn't know about the heroin yet. So we're like, okay, we found out that they had injected cocaine. He had a seizure on her bedroom floor, and she thought that he was going to die. So she called 911. And when 911 got there, he was okay once it took him a little while to be okay from the seizure. But when they got there, of course, the police came too. And when they were looking at identifications, he was like 19. And
Oh, and you didn't know that.
she told us he was 16. He looked 16. He was like a baby face. So I found out that night from the police that he was an adult, essentially. And they said to me that night, the police officer said, do you want us to take him away? Do you want us to arrest him? Are you pressing charges? Because he's contributing to the delinquency of a minor, essentially.
Yeah.
And I said,
oh,
yep.
What do you?
I did. And her dad wanted me to say yes too. We had talked about it on the phone after we got that. Yeah. And so we're like, yes, take him away.
Yeah.
And they did. And of course, Cassidy was distraught.
So mad.
Yes, so mad. But that's when a lot of this stuff came out about exactly what they were doing. And yeah, there were some things that happened after that, but it was all the same. Like we put her back in treatment and back with her therapist regularly. And then she seemed to be doing a little bit better. And then just one night disappeared.
Still at 16.
Didn't come home. Yeah.
Oh, your
and
heart.
we were terrified because we didn't know if he had come to get her or what. It was just like, she just didn't come home one night. We called the police to come over because we were like, we don't know if she's been kidnapped or just run away. We were terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I think it was very late and like in the middle of the night that she finally showed up and said that her boyfriend had gotten a hold of her, because we said they couldn't see each other. It was very much, you can't see him anymore.
Yeah.
And he came and picked her up. And that's when we found out that she had started to shoot up heroin with him.
Oh my.
Yeah.
At any point, I know you probably keep sharing some of these experiences, but
Yeah.
like your personal relationship with Cassidy, are there like positives as long with this like tension, or was it just like this kind of clouded over the whole relationship because you're navigating this really tense thing? Or they're like at the end she's going out on the weekends doing this, but during the week we're able to have, I don't know. You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're asking. And it is interesting because, yeah, I just am talking about all the negative stuff, but my goodness, she was such a bright light and just this talented and really super smart and beautiful and artistic. She had all of these like interests that she had kind of in between these bouts of mental illness, basically.
Yeah.
We were buddies. We had a really wonderful relationship at moments, especially when she was younger, and with her dad too. It was just the three of us because she was our only child. So we like did everything together when she was young. We traveled and she was just doing all the things with us. We rarely had a babysitter for her because why not just take when you got one kid?
Yeah.
Easy.
Fun.
So, yeah, and she had been involved in some of the theater productions that I had directed because she loved acting and dancing and singing. And yeah, so she was definitely like this little force. She was just the life of the party and really loved to be around her. She was very charismatic and magnetic.
That's really cool. I think sometimes when we talk about substance abuse, we just picture the person as like this drug addict that that's all they're thinking about day and night is like, where am I getting my drugs from? Where I want to see a picture of her as something more than that. And I think maybe to what your point is about talking about substance abuse, these are people with a full range of life. And this is just maybe one aspect that comes down to mental illness at the end of the day, really, it seems
true.
like.
Absolutely. And I think it slowly takes up more space in their life as they get deeper and deeper into the addiction. So I think at first it just is like this little shadow, and then it gets darker and darker. But even still, even the last like year of her life, there were still moments of light for her.
Mm,
I think what happens with substance use disorder is that it's this constant roller coaster for
mm,
them. It's going from like treatment to relapse
mm.
to being to back in treatment and then plateauing with being okay, and then it's followed by relapse again. So it's like just up and down and up and down. But the moments that she felt like she was in recovery and feeling good were wonderful. She
Mm.
was like back to her beautiful, spunky little
Yeah.
self and trying to get back to some of her interests and things like that. So that's what was so hard, is to see the potential when she
Yeah.
was doing well, and then God, then when she relapses, it's just it just breaks your heart
Yes.
because you're like you're back to square one.
Yeah. For her, was it this, I'm so frustrated, mom, I'm trying to kick this
She
and I can't
was.
do it.
Absolutely. When we found out she was doing heroin, we really started to get a bigger picture, and she really wanted help at that point. So we were trying to find some some program that wasn't just a 28-day program, like the typical things that your insurance is going to pay for, basically, which it's good because it detoxes them. So
Yeah.
we put her in an adolescent 28-day program right away that was fairly close to home, so that we could figure out what our next steps, because we knew that if she just got out of a 28-day program,
It's
the
back to,
time, yeah, it wouldn't take her long to get back with old friends or whatever. So that bought us a little bit of time to figure out what we could do, a little bit more long-term treatment. And we
mm.
found a treatment facility in Utah.
Oh,
Um,
random.
it wasn't one of the ones who have been all involved in the horrible law. You probably heard about a lot of those,
I
no?
actually don't know. No, I don't know.
There are
Some bad
some,
stuff going on.
like some of these old like wilderness programs and things that there was abuse
Oh
reported,
no.
and yeah, I mean they've gotten a bad rap for some of
But
these
something
treatment
similar
programs.
to that is
It
what she
wasn't a
was doing.
wilderness program. So what we found was a program down near St. George. It was called Sunrise, and they just took adolescent girls who were dealing with kind of specific issues. They either had to have some kind of substance issue, or some of them just had eating disorders as well.
Oh,
So it was just a multitude of different psychiatric issues, and which was good because they weren't treating the addict. They were treating the person,
okay.
like the whole
Cool.
person. So it wasn't just a drug treatment facility. It was like a full therapeutics program that was really well run, and
Like
they
the root, let's
used,
get to the root of this.
yes, absolutely. So she was there for 8 months. She was there for most of her
Oh,
junior year. Yeah. And they, it was like a school too. It was like a
okay.
therapeutic boarding school, I think is the technical term that they used. So they were doing all of their schooling too.
Okay.
And we, of course, there were all these family weekends, so we could come every so often, and then they worked really hard in that program to have a transition,
Mm,
like a plan for transitioning them.
okay.
So she would get to come home with us for a short period of time, and there would be rules about not contacting old friends yet.
Yeah.
This is just, and so then she'd get more and more like privileges the longer that she was home.
She's home.
So
Okay.
so yeah, it was a really well thought out program. I thought it was really successful for her at the time,
Yeah.
and it bought her some recovery time, but
Okay.
it didn't last.
Relapse happens.
Yeah.
So she came back for junior year, and then how long in like she was able to stay in a good place for how long?
I would say that she was probably, after she got back, she was probably okay for maybe 6 months, 8 months. It wasn't even a year.
Oh, so that was
Hmm.
discouraging probably.
Yeah, and it's as I think back, I'm like, what happened? But I think it's
Mm,
just, you just get a little lax with the way that she had been doing things. It's like that
Yeah.
just, you start to just lose that structure from being in that residential treatment program.
Yeah.
So she thrived in the residential treatment program. Like that was when she didn't have any of those outside forces
She's
hanging on her. She
she's crushing it.
thrived. She was beautiful. She got her like her spark back. You could just see
Yeah.
it in her when we would go to visit her, when she would come home for a weekend. It was like, oh, we've got her back. And she even
Yeah.
talked about how much hope she had for the future back then. She
So
really
it's
was
so
hopeful.
so discouraging when it came crashing down. So
Yeah.
do you feel like for those that are navigating a substance use problem, is
Mhm.
there always this root cause that's like that is causing them to say, I feel pain, I need to use something? And maybe for Cassidy's case, do you feel like she maybe never was able to resolve that? Or is there nothing to resolve? It's just, I don't even know if I'm
Well,
right asking the right question, but
no, I think I know what you're saying. And I'm no expert on the subject, but I do know some more than others probably. I think that anyone who suffers from a substance use disorder, it doesn't come from nowhere. It's not like you just,
yeah.
it's always, I think, in my experience, from what I've seen, there's something going on underneath. But I will say this, I think that some people are just born with an addictive, I'll say personality for lack of a better word, but addictive tendencies maybe.
Yeah.
They talk about in 2016, the Surgeon General came out with a statement for the very first time. It was this big study they had done on addiction. And he came out and said that addiction it's not a character flaw, it is a brain disorder.
Mm,
And so it was like a big shift, because so much of
that's
the addiction
huge.
community had always thought of it as just, we can change it if we try hard enough. Like it was like a
Yeah.
will thing. If I just will it. And for some substances, I think that might be true. But with opiates, it's such a strong substance. The chemical and the way it interacts with the brain is so powerful. It starts to remap the brain.
Yeah.
And if you think about the fact that she introduced that into her 15-year-old brain, and so it almost feels like she never stood a chance. Like
Interesting.
she
Yeah.
was so young when she started that I don't know if there's anything that could have really given her long-term recovery.
Wow.
Unless, and so here's another part of the discussion, is that some of the addiction community that is talking about like heroin and opiates and things are using medical, I can't remember what they call it, medically assisted recovery, I think, something like
Mm,
that. Essentially, it's about titrating them down, or giving them, they're not giving them heroin, they're not giving them fentanyl. They have drugs like Suboxone, which is like an opiate substitute.
okay.
And so they use it for treatment. And she was on Suboxone for a little while, but she didn't keep taking it. It gives
Mm,
their brain enough so that they won't crave, they won't have the cravings.
interesting.
Because a lot of it is just the fact that their brain is telling them they have to have it,
Yeah.
and they will do anything they can to get it.
I think that's so powerful that yeah, the shift of seeing someone that is using substance as it's not a character flaw. It's not a willpower thing.
No.
It's something else in our brain. And I've talked to other people on this podcast about other things similar. And
Mhm.
this is still addiction, but pornography addiction or things like
Oh,
that, where
sure.
it's instead of saying, oh, this person is like, what kind of person would be doing this? Or what kind of person would be doing this? It's not a what kind of person would be doing this. It's a are like technologies let that person down as a child that gets into
Right.
pornography or something.
Hmm.
And so it's really interesting. Right now, we're living in North Carolina, and I didn't really
Uh-huh.
know it at the time, but we're in a really high crime rate of a city.
Oh,
And I
wow.
have two little kids, and there's so many homeless people around.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously, many of them are using substance. We see it. My kids
Sure.
find it at the park. Our first day here, I was like, okay,
Wow.
we're gonna have to drive a little bit to parks.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
scary. That's scary.
it has been really interesting to have conversations with my 4-year-old and the way that he perceives people and the conversations that we have with him. And my first conversation with someone that dealt with substance abuse ended up being a transgender man. And once he could
Mhm.
get to the root of what was really causing pain was like hating himself and
Yeah.
realizing that was the first time I realized that like the substance abuse is that it's not about someone's character. It's about something else
Yeah.
going on. And so anyway, to have these conversations with my 4-year-old who now, when I talk to him, I say these people still deserve respect and dignity. And this isn't about character. This is about other things. So many things
Yeah.
can be at play. And so to have respect and give dignity to those that are in that space, because thinking about Cassidy being your child, how would you want
Mhm.
someone to treat that person? And yes, like you said, of course, people that are using substances can be dangerous. I get that. But
Absolutely.
also,
Sure.
but also to see people as people. And I just really love that. I'm glad you would share that.
Yeah. And I think to take it a step further, then, if we were to think about substance use disorder the same way we think about diabetes or cancer,
Mm,
and try to think about, okay, how do we find ways to treat this? Are there trials we can do to, but
yeah.
also to take away that judgment? We
Yes.
don't judge people who have diabetes or some
Yeah.
childhood disease or cancer.
So
We just
true.
treat
Yeah.
them.
Yes.
Eh,
The
Yeah.
judgment, the
So,
shame and judgment, I think
yes.
fuels it. And that's what I learned with pornography as well, is it just is a cycle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, there's a great amount of shame that we put on people who have any kind of addiction issue of
Yeah.
any kind. And that just drives them farther back into the shadows where they feel like they have to hide things because
Yeah.
they should feel shame about it. So
Yeah. And we hide
they're
it.
not talking to their loved ones. They're just hiding whatever it is that they're doing. So,
It makes them
so
feel
yeah, I think
worse.
the huge part of it is just how can we start to look at everyone with more love and less judgment
Yeah.
in our lives. Yeah, with compassion and kindness, like you said, talking to your child. That I think that goes a long way. I think it's going to change through generations as
Mm,
we start to figure out how to make things better.
yeah.
It's going to start with the children that are like brought up that way, where they
Yeah.
don't look at the homeless person that's maybe a drug addict and thinking they're a bad, horrible person.
Yeah. Let's hope.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if it's possible, but yeah, I do like to have some hope that it
I
is.
think it is. I have hope too. Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit more then after that. Tell us the next little bit of Cassidy's story, and then we can jump into some
Yeah.
questions.
So after she got back from Sunrise, she was well for a while and finishing her senior year, essentially. So finishing school, she getting back into her regular high school was
Mm,
difficult after being at treatment because the kids were treating her differently and the teachers were treating her differently, knowing that she'd been gone for that year and they knew where she was, and it was weird. It was such a weird thing. And
Well, what was that
there
like?
were
How are they treating her? Just so
so
as people listening that do have youth in their life that are coming back from a treatment, like, what are some of those things that are helpful or
so
unhelpful?
I there were some of her old friends, some good friends of hers, some of the girls that had been a friend of hers when she was very young and they fell away as
Mm,
she got deeper. Those kinds of older friends really just ignored her. Like they
yeah.
wouldn't have anything to do with her. And it was like that judgment thing.
Yeah.
She felt that when she went back to school, that people were almost like whispering about her. And it could have
You
been her
can't change.
imagination, but it was that kind of feeling that, oh, she's back,
Yeah.
Cassidy's back. And
Yeah.
then we got called in. I think the vice principal called us in at one point and said they were going to try to find, maybe they could do like where Cassidy could do like a study, like an individual study hall in the library for most of the day. And
Hmm.
it was like, it was weird because there was part of it that was like, okay, at least they're trying to figure something out, but they were just going to isolate her again.
Uh,
And she didn't
yeah.
want that. She wanted to be able to figure out how to get back socially
Do this.
into high school. But it seemed like they just wanted to hide her away. And when that happened, her dad and I were like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work. We can't have her in public school anymore. So we called the treatment center again to see if they could have her do online classes through their
Oh,
academic program so that she could finish high school. and they were happy to do that. So she got to work with all of the teachers she had already been working
Oh,
with
good.
in Utah, and she was able to finish that way. But it's funny because I think looking back now, I think even having her just do online school, it really did isolate her too, of course.
Yeah.
And she struggled. She felt like she just didn't have any friends.
I was going to say she probably
And
was lonely.
she was very lonely. And so I think, and she was still going to therapy and going to meetings, like 12-step meetings.
Mm.
And I think eventually just her social life became 12-step meetings mostly.
Ah,
And like group therapy stuff. And so that kind of brought back some of those older relationships of people who might have been in recovery at one time. But
yeah.
yeah, so she just got back this little slow slide back into
Back
that
into it.
sort of that circle of people that
Yeah.
she had used with previously. And that's where the relapse happened. And then she would just hate herself for relapsing and want so badly to get back into a healthy recovery. So she would quit, and she'd get back into meetings and more therapy sessions or whatever. It was just that battle, that back and forth. And then I think it just got too hard for her. So when she graduated from high school, her dad and I were getting divorced about that time. We told ourselves that our relationship was destined for not good. And we were thinking, if we can get her over the year 18 hump, maybe we can actually be good to ourselves and go our separate ways. So we decided to divorce at that time. And Cassidy she was doing well at that time. So she had done a theater camp that summer. She was staying drug-free. She had met a manager from LA at this theater camp who really liked her and wanted her to get with an agent in LA and stuff like that. And I was really ready to go geographically somewhere else. And I was starting to do like film and television work a little bit more at that time myself. Before that, I had been doing mostly stage stuff.
Okay.
And so when these opportunities came up for her, she said, "Mom, would you come with me to LA if I went?" Because that would have been a disaster if she had gone by herself. And I said, "You know what? I think I would. I think I do want to go." And so we just planned it. And I got an agent before we moved out there too. And we went on a few trips that extended to find apartments and things like that. So we went, and this was in 2012. Yeah, it was super fun. We had a great time at first. We were just like roommates, and she was working and I was working, and she was auditioning and I was auditioning, and then you'd think, like, how on earth does she find other people who are suffering from substance use? It's like magnets. But she told herself when we moved to LA, she told herself, "I'm not going to do heroin anymore when I'm in California." So she finds meth and other,
different things.
like, yeah, but there was still that need
Something
to feel better. So she fell in with a crowd that had easy access to a lot of things and just went down that slide again. And that was it turned out to be a really hard time. She was in and out of hospitals. There was a suicide attempt. We found out one night I had to take her to the emergency room because she was having a lot of stomach pain. And they said that she had a kidney infection. And so they kept her overnight in the hospital, and they were doing some other blood tests. The next morning, they came in with results that she had Hep C. That she contracted from a dirty needle, most likely, at some point.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So her health started to decline a little bit.
Okay.
She was struggling with a lot of things. She had some more pain. And then, of course, when you're in physical pain, you want it to go away too. So she had the double whammy of physical pain and a lot of emotional pain. So eventually she did get back into opiates, and yeah, it was just a roller coaster. And so eventually I called her dad and we were saying maybe it's time that she goes back to Birmingham. He had her still under his health insurance, and so treatment options
Mm,
were better in Alabama because they were in network.
yeah. Yeah, that would have
And
been crazy.
yeah, and she wanted to go back
Okay.
because she realized how bad it was getting in LA. So she moved back to Birmingham. And about that time, I had met, this was a couple years after we had moved out there. I had just met my late husband, the one who just died
Okay.
recently.
Passed away.
We met in LA, and we ended up coming to Utah together a little bit, a year or two after that, after Cassidy moved back to Birmingham. So I'm trying to remember the years, it doesn't matter, but she was in Birmingham and had the same issues. Sometimes she was doing well, sometimes she wasn't. She was living with her dad, and there would be some huge major thing that would happen. And in fact, there was a very major thing that happened. She ended up in jail overnight. And when she got out the next day, she had arranged for somebody to pick her up, and basically she was back like in some drug house that night.
Uh,
And she felt like she was in a really dangerous situation because she said it was like Breaking Bad. She was terrified and she didn't know where she was. She was trying to figure out how to get we were trying to figure out how to get her dad to find her. And
scary.
so anyway, eventually we got like an address, and he went and picked her up, and he said that was the night that he said, you can't come back to the house, you can't stay with me as long as you're using. I can't, I've just got to have a boundary right now. I
Yeah.
can't. You've got to figure your stuff out. And so he took her to a women's shelter that night.
Wow. And how
um,
did that would be so hard, first off.
yeah, oh, it tore him apart, and I can't imagine what she was going through. I think he said that it was almost there, that there was a bit of relief in her eyes, but
Oh,
also
interesting.
she was incredibly sad because I think she felt like, okay, she'd really screwed it up.
And let them
But he
down.
told
Mm.
her when he pulled up to that women's homeless shelter, and he said, Cassidy, if you can't figure out how to have long-term recovery, you will be dead within a year. And
Oh,
that was within the year that she actually died. Yeah, she stayed at that shelter for a little while, felt like she was doing pretty well. And then, of course, just the same pattern. She got
yeah.
back with some older boyfriend, and then they were doing well for a little while together. They'd moved in together. It seemed like she really wanted to try to fix things and have long-term recovery with him. And then one night he got his paycheck, and they were like, hey, let's celebrate. And he went and got some
Mm.
heroin. And the belief, I think, is, and we'll never know exactly what happened that night, but we think that they hadn't been using for a little while, so they
It's
probably
too much.
used, yeah. But he woke up, but she didn't. So they used together.
Um,
He woke up, and she was already dead.
gone.
On the bathroom floor. And they found out later, we assumed it was heroin, of course, and then the medical examiner found out it was fentanyl, straight fentanyl, 100%. And that was that was like November of 2016. And 2016 was the year that fentanyl really started to come on the scene in the US in a big way. And it's essentially just a synthetic opiate that's super, super strong, 50 times stronger than heroin. If you, like, a speck can kill you. So it wouldn't have mattered
Very
how much they took,
much.
probably. But which is why it's weird that he didn't die. And there's some questions there, but yeah, we'll never know what happened.
Scary.
Yeah,
Is it painful for you to share this story? I know you've written a book,
I've
and so
shared it. I've talked about it so much that I'm a little bit able to
Yeah, okay.
to just tell the narrative and be a little
Not get
bit
into the
more.
emotion of it.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I did write the book. So I've spoken in treatment centers sharing her story, and yeah, drug treatment centers and schools and things like that. So I have shared the story many times, and it still makes my stomach hurt a little
Mm.
bit, but I don't cry about it anymore when I'm telling the story, basically.
I'm sure it's hard at the beginning though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you're passionate about advocating for it. What are some things you would say that people listening, I'm sure there's a whole spectrum of the awareness of what substance abuse looks like, but what for you,
Right.
what are you advocating for and what is really top of mind for you?
The top of mind is taking away that stigma piece and the
Mm,
shame piece. If we can treat people with dignity, like you said, and treat them as humans first, I think they have a better chance of recovery. And some people might never have long term recovery. Cassidy obviously couldn't get there.
yeah.
As I look back at her life, I think she just wasn't meant to be long for this world in a way. It was like she just burnt
Mm,
out brightly and quickly. But when I think about like the suffering that she must have been going through, it almost feels like a little bit of a blessing in a way. I know that sounds really weird,
no,
but
yeah, I can.
it's like anyone else who's suffering from a terminal illness, which substance use disorder can be a terminal illness.
Yeah.
And for her, it was. And I watched my mom die of cancer 20 years ago. And
Mm,
I remember feeling relief when she was finally able to go. And so it's such a confusing thing to even have that moment of relief when I think about
yeah,
it, because then, of course, you feel guilty for thinking that way.
yeah,
But I wouldn't want her to suffer the rest of her life like that,
yeah.
never being able to feel like whole or at peace.
Secure, yeah.
You
No, for
know,
sure.
it's just that's just torture. But I think as far as the message, it really is about destigmatizing it. I think we have way too much judgment on people that suffer from these disorders. So
Yeah,
much judgment on any mental illness, really. All these depression. We don't talk about mental health the way we do body health. And
yeah.
I think when we when we can finally come to that understanding that our brain is a part of the whole body,
Wait,
okay, this
let me
should
separate them.
be, yeah, it's just because it's mental illness feels like something that's not tangible, that we can't
Yeah,
see, like a tumor or like that.
yeah,
We can see that, or we can see a broken arm, but we just have these behaviors that show what's happening internally. And the behaviors are awful. And so
yeah,
then we treat the person awful because
yeah,
they're behaving horribly. So we're like, oh, they're a bad person. But if we can
yeah,
separate the behavior from the person, I think that's another step. And as parents, I think we can do that. We can start when they're young
yeah.
to not shame them for bad behavior, but
Yes.
to show them that they aren't their behavior.
Yeah,
Even when they're little, to go, you're still a worthwhile person. And like that dialectical thinking, it's not but, it's and. Those two
and you're
things can
acting
be true at
terrible.
the same time.
Yes,
Yeah. It's like you are a wonderful kid, and that's not appropriate to do that.
totally. No, I
You know?
100% agree with that. And I think it's powerful to start that young. I agree. And
Yeah.
it just seems like it would have been such a pivotal moment in Cassidy's life when she went back to high school. And that's where like that deep stigma in
Yeah.
school was so detrimental
Yep.
for her.
It's true.
So,
If she had been welcomed with open arms when she went back,
yes.
it could have changed a lot about her future.
Oh,
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. And from teachers and from students.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard one because it really is hard to separate behavior from the worth of the person. We throw it all in one little package. We're like, this is who they are.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
did this bad thing, and so we're gonna punish them, which yeah, sometimes you have to have consequences, but let's not shame them for the behavior.
yeah. Or allow people to change. She came back from treatment and she was
Right.
doing great. And can
Yep.
we give someone else a fresh start and not look at them as to who they were, give them the space to be moving in a different direction? can
Yes.
just, I think that's really hard for us.
Yeah, not to be defined by our past.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if you're
Hmm.
religious. I'm religious, and I believe in a forgiving God, and I believe so strongly in that. And yet, our fellow community members, that's where we really get held back. I believe my
Hmm.
God's like, you can change every single day.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the people around me, it's like they're keeping me back. They're not giving me that space
Sure. Right.
to change and to grow. And so I think I see
Yeah.
that in our community as well, because we in Utah it is a very religious community.
Hmm.
And yeah, you'd
Yeah.
think we'd be able to see that a little bit more actually with that understanding of a Christian background of like forgiveness. You'd think we'd be able to picture that a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any religion that has it figured out as far as how to treat other people. And I'm
It's so
not,
sad.
I consider myself spiritual. I'm not a Mormon anymore. I was in the LDS church growing up, and I
Okay.
am not anymore. But I'm very familiar with the culture,
Yeah.
the church. So yeah,
Yeah.
no matter how what kind of a higher power or God we can believe in that is forgiving and unconditionally
Mm.
loving, that we can't incorporate that ourselves.
Yeah.
We have a really hard time
Mm.
as humans because we're not perfect.
Because we're not. Exactly.
No, it's a shame.
What would you say to parents who are currently in a situation having a child go through this? Do you have any advice or looking back in reflection?
I always say when I get this question that I feel like the worst person to give advice because I lost mine, that I wasn't able to keep her alive. But that wasn't my job to keep her alive at that point.
Yeah.
She was an adult, and yeah, anyway, I think as far as advice to parents is, again, try to treat them with more love and less
Mm.
judgment. Really try to see them as the little baby that they were, the tiny little perfect
Yeah.
being that they are inside, rather than always jumping to that judgment and that punishment of these things they're doing, because it drives them away. And we stop talking to them because we don't understand them anymore. And so
Yeah.
then it's just, they just retreat into the shadows, and who knows what's going to happen when they're not communicating.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had a pretty, her dad, Cassie's dad, and me, I felt like we did have really open communication with her. But even still, I do believe that I judged her harshly.
Mm.
I know that I did. There were times where I couldn't see past the behavior.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
really hard. And I fell into that trap of probably shaming her a bit.
Mm.
It's hard to look back on that and admit that to myself, but it's true. So I think that would be the message to anybody, not just parents, but anybody just in life. Just treat each other with compassion and love, and stop judging each other.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be judged. We
No,
don't
no,
want to be
no.
shamed.
Yeah.
Doesn't it feel good to talk about these like bad behaviors? It feels better to get it out and talk about it rather than hiding it
Holding it.
in the shadows.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I feel like I've recently realized I have some sense of this OCD that
Mm,
this is such a silly thing in comparison, but I feel like it gives me a glimpse into addiction where I like my face to feel smooth, and so I pick my face. So TMI
interesting.
maybe.
No,
For
no,
the
no.
first time, I besides talking to like about my spouse, I've never really addressed it and said I need to figure this out. But for the first time, I like
Yeah.
talked about it with my dad and said I need you to help me hold me accountable. I'd like to overcome this behavior.
Uh-huh.
And it was shocking how much easier it was for me to overcome. And I'm not overcome with it. This is like in the process. And it's like almost embarrassing to talk about. And it's not even a big deal. So I can imagine for someone else that's navigating something way bigger that has more shame around it.
Yep.
But for some reason, the gift of being able to talk to someone about that loves me and
Yes.
is that's totally fine. Talk to me about it. Let's figure it out together. To have my dad in that sense saying it's fine. Anyway, the power that gave me to have the strength to be able to overcome that has been so
Yeah.
insightful for me, even though it's a little thing. But
No,
anyway,
that's really, I think that's fascinating, because
yeah,
it's like, even if we're talking about things out loud with a therapist, that's not the same relationship as
yeah,
like an intimate or familial relationship.
yes,
There's not as much on the line with the therapist. We
yeah,
don't care as
nothing.
much if they judge us.
Yes. Oh,
So to
it's
open
yeah.
up with our loved ones and our friends and thing, I think that's where the key is. If we can have it all out in the open,
Yeah.
not just in the therapist office.
We don't like it. It's interesting as I do this podcast, so many people that are like, I would really love to talk to you about it, but I don't want my family to hear this podcast. And I'm like, how painful is it that the people that we care
Yeah,
about the most and that should be like our closest confidants that we're the most willing to be vulnerable with, we are not willing
yeah,
to do that.
no.
It's too painful, or there's too much shame, or we just are not willing to open it up. So,
That's interesting. When Cassidy died, the obituary, we told the truth. We said, we talked about her addiction. We talked about the fact that she died from a heroin overdose. We thought it was heroin, and that's what went in the obituary.
oh,
But we were inundated with people from all like social media that were like, thank you so much for sharing the truth about how she died. It
oh,
was the
interesting.
attention that she got from that, like that we got from that was bizarre. And then the
Interesting.
news did a story on us in Birmingham, and the news did a story on me here in Utah because I was living here when she died. And it was like people were talking about how wonderful it was that we were open and sharing about how our daughter died. And I thought it never occurred to us not to. For whatever reason, we were
Interesting.
like, why on earth would we just say she passed
Yeah.
quietly in the night? Or it's like, no,
She
this is the
didn't.
truth. So
Yeah.
and we put in the obituary, we mentioned at the end that far too many people are dying of these things, and we can't let shame and secrecy.
Wow.
Oh, I can't remember exactly the wording, but it was that message that we were very much, let's,
So that was important to you from the beginning.
it
It's like what
was.
you said, there's two things are true. She died from an overdose and
Hmm.
substance abuse, and she was a wonderful person that brought light to our
Yes,
lives. Interesting.
absolutely. Yep.
Is there anything else that you want to share? I don't want to take too much of your time. I have 100 other
Um,
questions, honestly,
no,
but
we'll have to do another podcast. No, I think we covered most of what I feel like is important with Cassidy's story. If anyone wants to read the book, they can get more information on the details.
I was just gonna ask, I ask all the people on this where they feel like they found belonging, and I recently shared in some lessons that I've learned is that belonging begins and is ultimately within ourselves. If you don't feel good with yourself, no
Yeah.
space is ever going to give that to you. But I still
Hmm.
do think there are spaces where we find belonging, and analyzing and understanding those are important. So I would love to know if there's any space in which you've, and if that space is just yourself, like where have you found I belong, I feel seen, all these things we're talking about, eliminating the shame, where have you not felt that shame?
That's interesting. I love that you said that finding the belonging in ourselves because I feel like because I feel a greater sense of belonging internally, it has made me feel like I belong anywhere.
Oh, I love it.
I can be in a group of whoever and feel like I belong because I have given myself permission. Now, there are
Mm,
obviously some groups of people that I feel more belonging with and even a greater sense of community. I
yeah.
would say that the film community here has been a huge, just an incredible community of love and non-judgment and just collaboration, and let's just hold each other up. That's basically the feeling here in
Cool.
the Utah film community. So it's been pretty incredible. And it's interesting because that community of friends are the ones who have showed up the most for me when I lost my husband 2 years
Mm,
ago. And when I got a cancer diagnosis a year ago, it's like all of these hard things that have happened to me. Cassidy died even. It's like the film community are the people who showed up for me.
they're there.
I had a film friend just go, I'm starting a GoFundMe for you when my husband died out of the blue. It was just rather than,
Well,
there's not any other community I can think of that's just been so supportive. And I feel just held up by them in general. So, yeah,
that's
that's,
amazing. Is it not like that? Is
mhm.
film community not like that everywhere? No.
No, no.
So it's unique.
It is unique because I think if you're in a larger market like in LA, you, it, it, it's like you don't have a group of people that's close to you that's just film, right? It's
Yeah.
everyone's doing film, but you also have all these other aspects of your life. It just feels like it's a very close knit
Mm,
community here and very supportive. It's not really about competition. It's about we're all in this together and how can we make film that is going to make all of us rise up.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it's
I
cool.
love to hear that.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
love to hear that you feel like you belong everywhere. I am hoping that people listening can get that as well and say, just choose to belong and you'll find it anywhere.
Yep,
You're
it's possible.
wonderful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.